Warren Ingram, he's a director at Galileo Capital. He's a personal financial advisor. Before we talk about the topic we agreed upon, Warren, I need to just share with you a quick email to a subject that's occupied much of what we've been talking about for the last 3 weeks. And that has been government retail bonds, fixed investments with government. Tonight, says our correspondent, please could you ask Warren Ingram to go back briefly to the government fixed interest retail bonds that were offering 11.5% over 5 years. Interest rate has dropped on the 2nd of May to 10%. Why did the local bond rate drop when South Africa's credit rating was downgraded by Moody's? I expected the local interest rate to go up, not go down. Does Warren still think it's attractive at 10% over 5 years?
So the first lesson is when we go on air and we tell you that something is great, take advantage very quickly because it might not be great or the offer might not be around for long. And I think that's the first lesson. So the truth is I don't know the reason why the interest rate went down. I think that there's a lot of confusion, if I look at our social media feeds as well about this, where people think that these RSA bonds are retail bonds, I should say, are related to the normal government bonds, which would be impacted by the credit rating downgrade. These RSA retail bonds are, it's important to try and think of them as a fixed deposit. So it's not really related to the credit rating. It's much more related to the normal interest rate environment that we're seeing in South Africa. And as we all know, the Reserve Bank has dropped interest rates by 2.25% in the last few months. And I think that's really the reason why the rate has gone down. I don't think it's related to the downgrade at all. And so that means that if you're taking a 5-year view, you're locking in 10% a year, 7.75 over 3 years and 6.5 over 2 years. Still a heck of a lot better than what you'll get from the banks, I think. And as some people are saying on social media, I mustn't say that they are capital guaranteed because the government could default. So there you go. I've said it. My view is that that's a very small risk right now. So small you could almost say it's not really a risk, but that is the only risk.
Okay, but there is a risk. I mean, every investment carries risk and governments do default. It does happen. And if there is economic mismanagement, if this lockdown does continue in perpetuity and government doesn't see common sense in terms of opening the economy up in a managed and orderly and safe fashion. Somebody shouting at me, Peter, on our Twitter, on our 31702 this evening, saying there'll be plenty of wailing if COVID spreads in the schools amongst pupils and teachers. Be careful of what you wish for. What I'm wishing for, Peter, is an adult response to an economic crisis brewing out of a health crisis. Nobody wants to be put in the face of danger. Nobody wants their children or old people or the infirm or anybody, ourselves, put in danger. But the long-term consequences of economic meltdown, Peter, the statistics are pointing to that, from what we know right now, being considerably worse than what the models are forecasting for the health consequences. And that, I think, is the appeal. So please let's not overreact to the information that you're hearing on the radio. So what people have been doing, Warren, and some people are very good at this, and generally there are people who understand emotions, there are people who understand markets, there are people who understand trading, and this idea of becoming, in the lockdown, I've got 10,000 Rand, 20,000 Rand, 100,000 Rand. I have no income. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go day trading because I think it's a sensible idea because my job might not be there in 6 months' time. So I might as well earn some easy money. Obviously, the easy place to do this is by playing the market because I heard about it at a braai 6 weeks ago. So off I go. Let's talk to Kathy, who found herself in a similar sort of position. Kathy, a short version, please, of your horror story for us this evening so Warren and I can better understand.
Okay. Hi, Bruce. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'd just like to share my story. I have had a very bad experience with day trading. I started off sort of the second week of March, trying to make some extra income, and I know nothing about trading, nothing about the markets, and this thing flashed all on Facebook on how one could make easy money, etc. So that's where I basically got the idea from Facebook. I gave it a try, And I went on to a platform with a company. I thought, okay, invest 3,500 Rand. That's what the ad said, and you could make some money. And I thought, okay, I don't know anything. Give and take 3,500. I could, win or lose. That's fine. I was able. But long story short, from 3,500 Rand, I landed up losing millions of rands. So my experience was basically I depended or relied on the broker who was advising me how to trade, and yes, I was making money, but I was also losing money. And I got to understand certain parts of the trading. For example, if your margins drop too low, you need to put in more money so that you could keep the trade going. And it came to a point where I consistently told the broker, I don't have money. I don't have money. I don't have enough money. But he made me open up trades and go bigger volumes, etc. So with the result, I listened to him. I took his advice, borrowed money, took out money from my bond just to keep the trade going. Eventually, it went up to millions, and I thought, wow. Every time he would say, just do a deposit, 300,000, 200,000, and today I would find 300,000. Tomorrow he would come back and say, okay, you need to try and get in another 250,000. So I don't
Kathy, forgive me for seeming unkind here, but at what point did you think to yourself, this is the worst idea ever? Because surely there must have been a point fairly on in this that the little angel in your shoulder tried to protect you from yourself.
Bruce, it's exactly that. I say to myself so often, I've got to stop. But the guy was so persistent. He was so insistent. Get the money, you're almost there. And I believed it because I was so deep in.
We've lost her. But she's told us enough of the story. Thank you, Kathy. I mean, Warren? I don't think I'm not often gobsmacked and I'm not often taken aback, but I'm just, again, there are just a couple of tells there for me. Adverts on Facebook, pushy brokers, pushy salesmen, reassuring, reinforcing. Tell me why nobody must do what Kathy has done.
I'll do that right now. I just wanted to ask a question. Have you ever heard of the Medallion Hedge Fund?
I haven't, no.
And the reason you haven't heard of them is because they're an American hedge fund, completely legit, been going since around about 1994, delivering a return of about 66% a year. And they don't advertise and they don't take anybody's money. And the reason they don't take anybody's money is because they're doing the job incredibly well for themselves. And they have the formula clearly. They have a way of trading, day trading and high-frequency trading that works for them. And they're successful in it. And they're doing it as a company for themselves, for the employees. And they don't want anybody to come in and share in that profit for them because it's their model and it's their intellectual property. And it's so valuable that they sign massive secrecy agreements. And they're making really good money. And the only way that people find out about them is that eventually the employees will leave and retire and take the money out because they can't leave it in. And so then they're happy to talk about it. And that's the secret to day trading. The only secret that you need to know is if someone's willing to sell you a program or a method of trading or a secret way of doing it or some other a software program and a book or a methodology that goes with the software program for $3,500, you're absolutely wasting your money. There is no way that someone's going to give you, and that's what they're doing. They're giving away the ability to generate that kind of money for $3,500. It's just not. It's not going to happen. So what they're actually doing is they're selling you a promise for $3,500, and then they're packaging it in a software program, and they'll be telling you that you need to make. And what Kathy was saying about margin calls. Those are basically, it's actual betting. It's not really investing more because you're putting on a little bit of money to take a huge amount of risk. And when it goes against you, you've got to cover the huge amount of risk, not just the little bit of money that you've put in, as simply as I can explain it. And what happens is you get caught out. And the people that make money on this do it for themselves. They either do it for their own pocket altogether, or they work for very big companies where the big companies will give them a pot of money and they'll manage that money on behalf of the big company and they'll share in the profits for that big company. But I promise you, there is no way that the successful people that do this are sitting on Facebook trying to get new investors. It's just not going to happen.
And there's also no guarantee here that the person that Kathy was dealing with was even in South Africa. There was no guarantee that there's any kind of protection, there's any kind of regulation, there's any kind of jurisdictional benefit that she could get. Because I don't know the entity, I don't know where it comes from, I don't want to know. All I want to know is the broad principle of the sort of risks that people who respond to these kinds of adverts are subjecting themselves to when they go, ooh, this looks like a very, very good idea.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't, it's not, it's certainly not our place to kind of critique people that get caught in this, because it is sophisticated. It does seem appealing. They make it sound very obvious in the beginning. They hook you in by showing you sort of fictitious trades where they'll say to you, look, just test in the beginning, and he will open an account for you. You don't have to put money in the beginning. We'll just show you what happens if. And that what happens if is the part where they hook people. And I can't tell you the number of times I've spoken to retirees who've just stopped work, who maybe they're quite mathematically inclined, or they've got some sort of reading that they've done, and they start this day trading, whether it's on foreign exchange, on shares, on contracts for difference, those kinds of things, and time again. I get that call 12 months later to say, you were right. You told me I shouldn't do it. I thought I'd play with a bit of money and see what happens. The play with a bit of money became a lot more money, and my retirement's taken a severe knock. And Kathy is by no means an exception. There are lots of people getting caught with this. And I mean, it's worth repeating. You're not going to find great investment ideas that, where someone sells you a methodology on how to trade on currency or shares or broader markets and commodities for $3,500 on and a course, and then they give you in the old days they would have given you a cookie. Now they have to do it via Zoom. So I guess they'll give you a friendly wave at the end of the course. But it's just not going to happen.
They'll give you a toffee by the end of the course. That's the problem. The only symbol you're going to get is a toffee. I mean, and again, no judgment here on Kathy. I mean, I think people fall for the stuff all the time. Generally, if it's happening on Facebook, it's not something that you should be treating seriously. Certainly not putting any money into it or throwing money at it. Whether it's news, whether it's views, whether it's perspective, whatever it is, if it is there, it is free, it is opinion-based, or it's being driven by advertising, which you see, and it comes with big, fat, hairy promises. The fact that it is there should be a warning to you to stay away. And I'm sure there are perfectly legitimate organizations that use Facebook as a distribution platform and advertising platform, but unfortunately it is a feeding ground for sharks. And that's where Kathy has found herself.
Absolutely. And I think, if people want to, to check, if they want to do a double check, the first thing they do, just do a Google search on the name of that and say review. Experience and see what other people are saying. That's a great step. And secondly, is the company registered in South Africa with the FSCA, the Financial Services Conduct Authority? Because even if it's an international share trading platform, the good ones will be registered in South Africa. They'll go through the due diligence here and expose themselves to the regulators and open up their books and show what they're doing. And in that way, that should give you at least one level of comfort. But when a company is based in some island somewhere and says, we don't need to be regulated there, or we're based in Germany, we don't need to be regulated in South Africa, that's a great sign to hang up the phone, close your laptop, whatever the deal is, don't engage with them. They are there to take your money, not to make money for you.
I got a cold call the other day, and unfortunately, I've got such a short fuse when it comes to this rubbish that I just started shouting, and the person laughed and put the phone down, and you can't trace these calls, and you don't know where they're coming from. I've got to learn patience, and I've got to work out how the record function on my phone works so I can play these things on the radio. But my blood boils. It goes, I mean, if kettles could boil that fast, we'd solve South Africa's electricity crisis. Because it drives me mad that these thieving scoundrels can sit or anywhere in the world on a perfectly using Wi-Fi, whatever programs they're using. They can use the whatever WhatsApp calling they've got in their own jurisdiction, make a free phone call to you a million miles away, and then it's like fly fishing. And they put the fly up on the water and they wait for you to bite. And Yo, it just drives me completely insane. Warren Ingram, thank you this evening. Kathy, I'm sorry that you got busted. I'm sorry that you got caught. And I hope that others can learn from your lesson.